I'm very conscious of the fact that with animals that if you move around a lot, it impacts them harder
Definitely.
than even you. Like I've moved an unbelievable amount of times in my life. I'm 40, and I've moved nearly as many times as my age. I,
Wow.
the,
A lot.
yeah.
I've done a few cross country moves. I grew up in Michigan. I was born in Florida and I grew up in Michigan, and I moved to California and I was there years when I was 19, and then I moved to Florida, and then I was here for a few years, and then my husband and I moved back to Michigan, and now we're back to Florida. So it's been all over the place, but
Whereabouts
yeah.
in Michigan?
We're like outside of Detroit area, so we usually just tell people we're from Detroit because it's
So
easier
like
than being.
Novi or like farther away?
Yeah, so I grew up in Livonia, and he grew up in Dearborn.
Okay, so here's where. So my grandmother lives in Redford, Michigan.
Okay, yep,
So you know where 96 and Inkster Road is, that magical dividing line?
yep.
That's where my grandmother lives. So I know Livonia quite well, and I also know I know that whole area quite well. So
So you're very familiar with it.
oh yeah,
That's so
yeah,
cool.
it's a big part of my growing up. I would spend my summers with my grandmother in the States when I was younger, like 8, 9, 10 years old, probably till I was till no 10, 11, 12 years old.
Oh, wow.
And it was good. It was good because I think I looking back, I realized some things too. Um, there were things dad needed to do that like things he had to deal with that me being some of my grandmother's great. My grandmother was honestly awesome for me. The only
Aww.
real regret I have, I was in Windsor for during most of the pandemic. I'm in Canmore right now. The only real regret I have, honestly, about the whole pandemic, because as crazy as things went, I couldn't go across and see her,
Oh.
and that was painful. Like that was
Yep.
the only part of that whole experience that was super super painful. But no, I know the area you lived in quite well. So
Yep. Yep. My grandparents grew up in Wyandotte, so we lived there for a while because we were going to buy their house at one point. Um, so we're just pretty much Lower Michigan. You
yeah.
know, we were all over the place, and not quite 40 times, but we moved a
Oh
lot.
yeah. Like I said, I'm a special. I'm a special kind of crazy. I really really am a special kind of crazy.
Well, I lived in California for just under 2 years, and I think I moved 3 times, maybe 4 times, while I was there for under 3 years or 4 years.
Yeah, my personal record when I was living with my dad, my personal record was 3 times in a year.
Oh,
That was a crazy year.
yeah.
Um, well, it was just well, technically me 4 times was I was spending my summer with my grandmother one of those times. But yeah, we were in London, Ontario, and we ended up going from London to Dorchester all within a like 6 month period. It was absolutely crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. So like it's just one of those things where you just realize like again life just goes down this you just go down this certain road. What it
Yep.
gives you moving around as much as I have though is a certain like I don't fall in love with anything. There's one in like in the best way in the sense that I realize that everything is kind of temporary,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right, and that's actually a really good approach to life.
Yeah. It gives you a broad spectrum of experience too. So, no matter what you face in your life, you can always compare it to something that you've already been through. So,
It's also, I mean, I don't know if it's like this. It's almost like I had this gift of reading a story at different points in the story because
yep.
you would see some of the things when you move around, you get to certain points in life quicker than people that live in one place their whole lives. You get to certain things quicker because you
Yep.
see the ups and downs of all these things. Like, so like for example, I could tell by the time I was in my 20s where a city was in its development just based on where I grew up in the past because
Right.
I lived well you just could see it right because if jobs are being cut or jobs are being shipped somewhere in one city and you go to another city where there hasn't happened yet, then suddenly you start seeing the same signs like, oh, this is where we're gonna go.
Right.
But also on the flip side, like if a town is building or up and coming, you see those signs too, right? It's one of
Yep.
those things where just like I can read the room quicker than anybody else.
Yep. For sure.
Yeah. But anyway, are you in Florida right now?
Yeah, we are. We're Central Florida. So,
Okay.
like Orlando area.
Okay, there's nothing wrong with being in an Orlando
No,
area.
it's safe from hurricanes. Put it that way. We're so landlocked that we don't have that problem where we're at now. So that's always a good thing.
So no hurricanes, swamps. You got swamps.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would say all of Florida has a swamp at one point or
No,
another.
well, here's the thing, right? If you don't have a swamp, you got hurricanes. If you
Yep.
have no hurricanes, you got a swamp, right? That's what I figured, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you get like, are you guys comfortable where you at now? Are you guys thinking, maybe just say fuck it, I'm gonna go Hawaii, Hawaii
We're
one year?
too, so we're kind of open to the idea. I mean, we're comfy where we're at now, but I wouldn't like say it's forever. So that's kind
No.
of neither one of us are really attached to that. Kind of like you, like we'd rather have a few more experiences and live a few more places. So I do have a friend that is actively putting together. She's going to be transitioning to van life, like where you get one of those really nice Mercedes auto transit vans and you convert them into like a little tiny home. So she is in the process of that now. Um, and she loves it. She's all excited about it. So
Well, I might be doing the same thing too. Like I know we've only talked for like.
she's somebody with that wanderlust, and I was like, this is totally. She's like, I'm thinking about doing this. I'm like, this totally fits. This totally fits.
Yeah,
With what?
it's also more along the lines, like in my particular case, I am. How do I put this? Uh, I like this show. I have an incredibly big mouth, and right, I mean, it's just one of those real gifts, and right, and I'm good at it. So, but the thing is, like, I'm already thinking of ways where I want to take the show. So the ultimate goal is an obnoxious studio with like random weird walls of zen, and I'd be like, hey, would you like to come over and drink booze and talk about weird shit on the air? And
Yeah.
you're like, I can already tell you'd be like, yeah, sure, why the fuck not? Right? Right.
Yeah, that sounds like a great time.
It sounds like a great time, right? But you get there in steps. So this Zoom, Twitch, whatever this is, right?
Yep.
This is kind of like the first step of that journey. Can I talk to anyone, meet people like yourself? But yes, folks, we've just met, so I have no idea where this is going, nor does she. It's like, oh, whatever, we'll see where it goes.
We're
right?
rolling with punches.
That's right. So the reason I bring it up like this is, right, is so the next step for me would literally be going to say, so describe your wondrous swamp, and so I know which alligators I must have the rest of it come see ya, right? And you're like, I love you, right?
Yep.
Yeah, right. Because that's the thing, right? It's like I know take I-75 all the way down to a certain point, and afterwards I'm like, yep, there's okay. Where the hell do I go from here, right? I'd be like,
you keep going south on 75, you're gonna hit the ding 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 ding.
Yeah. Exactly. There comes a point.
Yeah.
Like it carries you most of the way there, but there's like there comes a point where it's like, nope, you're just gonna be on it for you gotta get off it somewhere. So especially in Florida, unless I want to go all the way down, it's like, oh, my van can't become a boat. It's like, that would be cool. If I could like a transformer van into a boat, that would be amazing.
Yeah, we were in Naples, Florida for a while. So that was like you just got on 75 and you just took it all the way. And like that was really nice, but it was kind of a weird place because everything shut down after 9 o'clock. So like hopefully your life was because like your fast food joints, your grocery stores, everything was shut down. There was like one like Coney Island type restaurant for like the bar goers, the young kid clubbers, and there was like one club in town. And it was a weird place. Naples is a weird place. Naples, Florida is a weird place.
There's lots of weird places in the world. I got news for you. There's lots of weird ones. I lived in Toronto. Toronto's weird. Detroit, depending on whereabouts in Detroit, is very weird.
Yeah, there's definitely some weird areas of Detroit.
Yep, there's some also dangerous areas in Detroit too. I'm sure you know where those are. It's like, hi.
Yep.
You just keep driving. Don't ask
you just
questions.
look at a few street signs, and nope.
Do you see anything? Nope. So, and then it's like, well, there's not even, and you just look around, you see nothing but garbage, and you're like, oh, I'm in one of those places, right? Yeah. And then, but no, I think the interesting thing about life is there's like there is no normal. I think the one thing I've come to like this ultimate realization is like normal does not exist. There is just our degrees of insanity wherever we're at and what we can tolerate and live with. And it's
Absolutely.
so fucking wild. Like, and now you say it like that, it's like, because you never know. Like, you go in somewhere, it's like, we're some ways we're the exact same species, no matter where we're at. And then in other ways, it's like, this is only here. How?
Yep. We're just, on this floating planet in the middle of space, and, we're here for a good time, not a long time.
That's right. That's pretty much it. That I like that. I really, really do. So, I don't know how familiar you are. So, my favorite like crazy worlds that you're only in for a brief period of time, something like this world. So, are we on the back of a giant turtle?
I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest with you, but
All right. I gotta ask because okay, so again, you're pretty open minded, you're pretty out there. So, how did you get into writing fiction? Other than the fact that it might be the perfect place for someone that just very open to try stuff.
honestly, I kind of like, ever since I was a kid, I had like this wild imagination, and I'm sure like every writer says this, like, I always had a wild imagination as a kid. I like lived alone. Like, I was not alone as a kid, but like I lived on a street with no other kids. And so it was either like I came up with my own fun and my own, imaginary worlds, or there was no fun. And so I would do that pretty regularly, and in that process just kind of would come up with these little worlds, and it just became like a mental exercise for like, okay, well, when I'm bored, or even when you're like in a weird situation, let's say you're forced to go to that family function you don't want to go to, or to that school recital that you don't want to be at, that kind of thing. You're there, and so you're just making the best of it in your head. So that was kind of like where it started. But as for like actually making it a reality, I had kind of had this idea for a couple of years, just kind of been playing with it. And when the pandemic happened, and it was like, okay, well, we can't go out and see our friends, we can't really do anything at home, like, I love you, but like we have to like do things on our own because like we don't want to drive each other up the wall. I was like, okay, I'm gonna just, flush this out and see what becomes of it. And so then it became like, all right, well, I'm gonna get my characters in order, okay, and then I'm gonna get like the full plot in order, and like then it was like, holy crap, there's like a whole story here. So it just kind of like all fell into place. But I think like the idea of writing for like mafia romance fiction and thriller, like that was kind of strange to me, but it was just something that was in my brain, and it was like a voice that just wouldn't stop talking. So I couldn't go to sleep at night because I just had these characters in my head like, no, 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 I want to say this, or I want to say this. So that's just kind of how it happened.
So this is the impression I get. I could totally be wrong here, but it sounds to me like once upon a time, life distracted. You had all these voices in your head that you kind of were just hanging out with, but life distracted you from like really having a full, deep conversation with them. And then the
Not
pandemic happened, and then the pandemic happened, and then it was like, well, shit, I'm out of excuses. Hello, voices in my head. How you doing
right.
today?
And everybody else, like, what do y'all got to say? We'll unlatch that box for a second. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was kind of just always there. And like, I had a really long commute a lot of the time, so as I was driving, I'd just be like randomly, going through it, like, oh, this would make a great movie idea, is usually how like a lot of my ideas started. But I had like focused on this one for so long, I felt like I knew these characters personally, and I was like, I feel like there's a decent story here. So you're in the middle of a pandemic, you don't know how long it's going to be or what's going to happen, and you are struggling. I would struggle to fall asleep a lot of times. So I would write until I fell asleep, even if it was like on my phone, just kind of putting ideas down. And then the next day I would just kind of see like, okay, well, what of this is actually tangible? What can I make of this mess that I came up with at 2 in the morning last night? But yeah, so it just ended up being that you just listen to some of those voices that you had the opportunity to, you suddenly were gifted tons of time. You had
Yes.
like what felt like an unlimited supply of time at that point, with no end date anywhere in the near future. What do you do with it?
Well, I know what I did. I decided to become a freelance writer slash like because I'm like if there wasn't a time to quit and try other things, it's now.
Right. Yep. Time to take that chance. And it was something I'd always wanted to do, but I was like, no, I don't know. I gotta get focused on getting that adult job and doing that adult thing. And, you
Right.
know, I had very strict parents growing up. So it was kind of like, that's what kind of stifled that creative side a little bit. And so when the pandemic happened and it was like, okay, well, I have all this extra time and why not? Even if it's just for me, why don't I just write it all down? And I ended up kind of chatting about it with my husband and then chatting about it with a couple of my friends. They're like, no, that's a really good idea. I'd like to see whatever you write. So just kind of came about.
So, like I have like big crazy thoughts too. And I'm sure like we all writers kind of,
I
but
think
I had
all writers do. We have
all of us do. But I had like this epiphany when okay, so I kind of my mortality at a very young age. So I've always known I've always had a limited time. And I've always treated kind of my life like, okay, I only have so much time to do stuff. As I've gotten to this age now, I'm like, okay, there's still other things I want to do and accomplish and achieve. And part of me, there's some other parts that I like to do certain things. But when you get right down to it, right, I recognize like the real world is not what people imagine it to actually be. And then it's crystallized. The pandemic kind of crystallized one very important thing in that there really is no rules in life.
You touched on a really good point, and that is that the real world isn't a real place. It's social media and this whole idea of what our lives look like to the rest of the world versus what our lives actually are like completely opposite things a lot of the time. So you're right, like you really can make it whatever you want to make it. And there are no limits except for like what you put on your own self. So
yeah, that's it, right? Like we all come to this realization. I think, actually, I don't know if everybody ever does come to this realization. I think it's one of those things where you look around and you realize that these things don't matter. At least not the way. I learned a long time ago. Really, there's only two things in life that really matter: do what you love with people you love.
Yep.
The rest of this life doesn't mean shit. Right.
That's awesome. And it's awesome that you realize that early in life, because a lot of people don't. A lot of people realize it at the end of their life, and then they're like, "Well, I could have done so much more."
Well, it's also just okay because again, partly you understand. I think you understand this maybe more than most because you moved around, not maybe as much as me, but you've gone through the extremes like I have. In this sense, life is very temporary. There's no guarantees for tomorrow, none. Nope. You can try to prepare for the future, but the truth is, okay, like one of the biggest things I look at, a lot of people talk about is retirement. I think it's the biggest fiction going. Because I think this idea that you're going to work somewhere until the end of your life, so you don't have to work anymore. My thought process has been, why are you waiting so goddamn long? There's too much. There's too much to life to do and see. And this idea of
our parents and like our grandparents that had that set plan for like retirement, like it worked for them. But I think
it was a different world.
Completely different. I mean, a lot of our jobs now, we don't get pensions for those jobs. Whereas like our parents and our grandparents, they stayed with the job for, 20 years, they would have a pension with that job. So you're right. It costs more to invest. It costs more to live. So even though you're holding on to that money for retirement, it may not last you until the end of your life. And that's a scary thought in itself. So you're right. It's completely temporary.
There's no guarantees. So I mean,
you're doing
the idea of
this idea that you're trying to do what you can to plan for the future while also trying to live in the moment. Like,
there is a balance to it. Don't get me wrong. Like for example, like what you eat. I like me some ice cream. I really, really do. My whole diet shouldn't probably be ice cream, though. It's probably not a good idea, right?
Your dental bill.
Not just your dental bill, your heart, your liver, heart, all that stuff. Just like it catches up eventually.
Can't have ice cream forever. Shucks.
I know, but I mean, and Lord knows with the cost of your medical down there, like it's one of those situations like seriously, if I was living in the States right now, the biggest thing I'd say, how do I avoid ever going to a fucking hospital in your country? Because that's honestly, that's yeah. I mean, that's a sad reality. I think
my husband has a really good friend from Denmark, and what did he say? He's like, it's so scary to me that Americans eat like their healthcare is free.
yes, yes.
That's humbling. That's a humbling statement to be like, wow, we really don't take care of our bodies. Like,
You guys are the most medicated and yet one of the least healthiest countries in the world. You're both,
and
and
I
I honestly
probably one most unhappy too, because like
that too.
If you're unhealthy, chances are you are unhappy one way or another. Either you're in a lot of pain, or you're mentally, emotionally in a lot of pain.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And there's so I mean, as a cult, like right now, I think the one cool thing about the pandemic, there's not a lot of cool things, but there's this one really cool thing. Most of the system is not needed. That has been my big crazy idea. I mean, okay, here's the thing, right? A community. You're in Florida. I'm in Canmore, Alberta. There's literally about no hyperbole, 2,500 miles between us. Yet we're talking, yeah, right? Yeah. Isn't that cool that we're talking like this from that far away?
Yep.
Right. It's crazy, right? So, what's a city? And where literally we can talk to anywhere in the world. What does a city look like? What does a governing body look like? We have cryptocurrency, so we don't actually need a banking system anymore. Social media, for all it's crazy, is also probably, if you want to find out what's going on in the world truly, you can look on social media and find it better than you can go and watch any mainstream news network.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're looking at it, these are fundamental things. Most of these fundamental things are obsolete. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I think one of the big things going on right now is we're deciding what kind of system is going to be going forward. And with all the other crazy things we could talk about, but I get the feeling we probably don't want to do this because of the nature. But I will just say this. I think the real war of the next 5 years is this. What kind of world do we want to live in?
Right.
Right? Do we want to be led to a different world, or do we want to create a new world?
It's really, I see that. And it is interesting because, like, in my book Catalyst, I have my main characters in the mafia, and he's presented as this morally gray individual, but as the reader gets more exposure to him and he actually comes out and explains to the female main character, like, this is what I do, what he does is more like, I don't want it to come across as like conspiracy theory, like that's kind of what he does, but he kind of explains it as like, your government is here for control, and my role as the mafia is to present things and make things available that your government has deemed you incapable of making a decision for yourself. So he says, like, in regards to doing drugs or prostitution, those are your choices with your body and your brain, but your government says, nope, you're not allowed to make those choices. Mm-hmm. So I, as in the mafia, I provide a different kind of service, a different kind of lifestyle. So he's like presented as this character that's like, we're all about free choice. Now, you're not totally free of the consequences of those choices, but he's just there to say, like, your government is only giving you 60% of what's available to you. I'm providing the other 40%. I just provide it and let people make the choices they're going to make. And that was kind of like, I don't know how accurate that is, but if someone told me like, nope, that's really how the world works, I wouldn't be that shocked by that, because I feel like we are limited in our exposure to certain ideas, certain,
Yeah, absolutely. No, I would go so far to say the more dishonest your government is, the more likely you're going to end up with a more criminal world. Because what is considered criminal will be opened more and more and more and more. If you really sit there, this is no conspiracy. This is just what governments do. Governments only really have one power: create laws. That's it. They can create laws of how to dictate things. They're not scientists. They don't have these superpowers to affect the world, but they can create laws that we live in. Now we have to agree to those rules. Right. We have to agree. Now, if we don't agree to those rules, what ends up happening is there's a big struggle. And if this sounds very much what's going on in the world right now, it's because it is. A lot of people aren't necessarily agreeing with what's being presented. Some people do, some people don't. So what ends up happening is if there is no compromise to reach, what's going to end up happening is you're going to create a very dishonest system. And once you create a very dishonest system, you're going to actually create more criminals than you would law-abiding citizens eventually. Eventually, everybody breaks the rules.
Yep.
That's what inevitably happens. And when you look at famous pirates, famous criminals in history, some of them, I'm not saying all of them, I mean, some of them are fucking monsters, but some of them, if you really look at the situation and circumstances of their era and their time, and I mean, this is very true. We talk about those really nasty places in Detroit. Most of those people are just doing what they can to survive. You understand that it's a very different mindset there. It's a different world there.
That's like you hit the nail right on the head. And that's something that is addressed in the book because, you have this female main character that has not been exposed to this life that Jackson lives in the mafia. And so he's looking at it like, I'm sure you think I'm a monster. And she's kind of like, no, it's not really what I think. But when she's exposed to some certain things and she's forced to make choices, he's like, you can't judge yourself based on who you are when your back is against that wall, because if you have no other choice, like, you have to be very careful. Like, it's judging someone who has no other choice to make. And, it is kind of that other side of things that none of us are. And that's something he actually says in the book is like, none of us are 100%, Snow White and pure, or 100% completely like totally darkened and totally, on the other opposite end of the spectrum. We're just a mixture of both. And it's those choices that we make in the moment and repeatedly that, define us as people.
Yeah, it like the ultimate character test is what you are willing to do and don't do and why. There are lines we all draw the line in the sand for ourselves. It's like, I just can't do this. Whatever that is.
Yep.
Maybe you cross that line eventually. And well, it matters why. It's not that you did it, it's why you did it. Right? And like I said, you can turn anybody into anything. The honest truth and trick of the world is people have to realize that if the world has only a handful of people getting opportunities, and if everybody else does not, well, then everybody else does not is going to do whatever they can to create those opportunities for themselves.
Yep.
And in a world where only a few, that usually means the most ruthless people win. That's just how it is.
Yep.
Right? That's just how it is.
Nope. That's something that's very it's covered extensively in my books. And how it's kind of addressed is like we have two main characters from two complete worlds, like that are totally opposite. He's been like, born into this multi-generational mafia family, so he's used to this. He's always been like in the underground. That's what he's in charge of. And she's, done everything right from the beginning. She turns her library books in on time. She puts her cart back at the grocery store. Like, she's that kind of person coming in contact with someone that, not to say that they're for anarchy, but he's just kind of like, it's nothing like what you expect. And, her exposure to that and just seeing that even in those situations, there still is morality. You talked about some of these pirates and these people that in the course of history were regarded as, oh, they're a bad guy, or, they're all these things. A lot of them had that moral code that they lived by, because they had to justify what they did, the Robin Hoods of the world. So it just helps us see that, like, there's a lot more to those morally gray characters, like they're not so one-dimensional.
When we create a morally gray world, we've created a world where which people can't thrive.
Yeah.
And right, that's the truth.
Yep.
And I hope, because again, just like my big original crazy thought, we're coming at where we're being led to versus what we can create. I hope people recognize that our choices in terms of where we go as a whole is going to create, again, if we force, I tend to believe that I to believe that without freedom, you don't really have anything worth a damn. If we create a situation where there are no good choices, I do think I mean, seriously, I might be a pirate in 5 years. Who knows, right? It just might be it might be the nature of the world. It might be, sounds dumb.
I always
But
said that someone tried to steal my dogs or something, like I would go total vigilante. Like
I see you as someone that I see you as someone that I would lives and let lives. I also see you as somebody that if someone tried to, I would not want to try to take from you. I think something tells me deep down on the inside, I would not want to try that. Right? Because hey, listen, you know this as well as I do. Like you have to be a little ruthless in the world, just a little bit.
Absolutely.
I think you got it. I could be wrong, but I think you got it. And
I like you, Josh. You're a quick learner. I like you.
The states taught me how to be.
What's that? Is that from? It's like I like you, but you're crazy. It's like Will Ferrell. I forget what that's from.
It might be Anchorman.
And it's not Anchorman. It's like where he gets shot with like a tranquilizer dart, and I think it's like Old School. Maybe I think it was Old School.
Oh, is it Frank the Tank?
Yes, I think that was it. And he's like,
Frank the Tank, yeah.
Crazy. That's what I think of.
Well, I'm openly crazy. But the United States taught me how to.
And especially, I always said that like I wanted my female readers to be able to relate to Natalie. Not that Natalie is like a stay-at-home mom or something, but I said that she kind of had that energy because I always saw like stay-at-home moms as getting like a bad rap. Like, oh, she's just a stay-at-home mom. And it's like, do you realize that all day long they're dealing with crazy, tyrannical toddlers and screaming? And at the same time, like if, you just showed up unannounced, a lot of them like, oh my God, yes, come in. Let me give you a warm meal and, some lemonade. But like if you tried to touch one of their babies, like Mama Bear is going to come out and claw your face off. And I think that all people have that in them. It's just what level do they snap and become that, Harley Quinn crazy character?
I don't think it's really Harley Quinn crazy. It's how we're wired.
Right.
I'll give you a good example of this. Like, so I'm a Canadian, so Canadians are considered very nice. Then I lived in Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, and I learned in Phoenix how to become a little bit more ruthless and mean. Now I'm still a nice-ish guy, but same thing. If there's a certain, like, you try to take from me, I mean, I'll cut you. I mean, and it sounds like a really simple, straightforward thing, but you learn.
Don't mistake.
I try to explain.
Kindness for weakness is my favorite.
Yeah, no. It's usually the other way around. Kind people are actually really strong, but when you push them to a certain point, it's like, well, okay. I mean, if this is what you want, I will make that example out of you. And that's
someone who's really attached. Like you said, you moved around a lot, so you learned that like this experience is very fleeting. So I don't see you as being someone who's like very attached to like the physical things. Like if someone was like, hey, I really need this, and they never gave it back to you, you'd be like, okay, it is whatever. As long as it wasn't like something super sentimental. Like I'm that kind of person too. And I would just be like, oh yeah, it's no big deal. Don't worry about it. But
it's not things, it's respect.
Yes.
Right. It's not things.
Nope.
I will let a certain degree of treatment, like there's a certain thing, like things, not many things really mean much to me. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
But where it goes is, hey, he's always going to be okay with this. Hey, he's always like, no, I'm going to eventually just like not so quietly make an example of you. It's like, where the hell did this come from? It's like,
right.
You should have known better. You could have asked. There was things you could have done, and there were things you could have. Also, it taught me a very important lesson. I listen to what people really want.
So you're probably.
I've learned.
I assume. Are you an empath?
Pardon?
Are you an empath?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep. Like recognizes like.
What I've learned is
you see a lot more than what people actually say.
Yeah, well, absolutely not just what they say, but also what they don't say.
Yep.
Because it's what they don't say that actually gives the real game away, right? So one of the hardest lessons I learned. It took me until I fixed my teeth about 4 years ago, and but right before I fixed teeth, I came to a very, very real realization that people do what they want to do all the time. The
Always will.
Yeah, always will. So the real question you got to ask yourself is, what want are they serving? And that's a really interesting question, because if you're doing everything you want, then well, some things seem counterintuitive. It's like, but is it though? What do they actually want?
Yep.
And then once you
And what do they
realize
want
that,
me for? Why am I here?
yeah, exactly. And that's, as a freelancer, I don't know if you freelance.
Yep.
I wouldn't. Yep. But if you do, like that's actually a big one as a freelancer, because I learned that very quickly, that I do not want to be taken advantage of, right? And it's really easy. I've mentioned this many times in my podcast in the past. Price points. The reason why sometimes price points are as high as they are in some cases, it is respect.
Yep.
Right? That's what it is. Human beings do not learn. Human beings do not learn unless there's a consequence attached to certain things.
Yep.
About respect. And
and
will,
that's
if I.
usually a tough thing, especially for empaths, to put that price tag on there, because we want to be generous and we want to be kind, but we also know at the same time that you can get taken advantage of very easily.
What came down to me was this. I don't want to go back to a day job anymore. Like, I want to do different and strange and crazy and wonderful things. But I gotta love what I do.
Yeah.
And that means for me, specifically personally, right? Specifically and personally, that I'm going to be around people that value me.
Yeah.
So that price point is like, no, that's going to be the value mark. That's legitimately going to be it. Otherwise, you know, I'm going to get walked on. And also the other thing too, I had to fire one of my first freelance experiences. I had to fire a client, and why I fired the client, literally came down to just recognizing they were not ready, or it was what they wanted me to do for them. They did not prioritize the task amount where I was in the best place to help them.
Right.
So the kindest thing I could do was fire them. But it also taught me an awful lot about, it's like, that sounds cruel when you sit there and think about that.
But it's also like, if you don't set boundaries, like, no one will. Mm-hmm. You have to set your own boundaries, and that's some of the hardest things, especially if you are an empath and you are a giver and you are just naturally that person. You still have to know, like, where your limit is, and when it becomes, like, not unbeneficial. That's not a word. I don't know if that's a word, but you get what I'm saying. Like, there's always a limit.
Yeah. And I don't ever want to resent what I do for the rest of my life. I'm too old for that shit.
Life's too short.
Yeah.
Too old for that shit. I say that all the time. I am grown. I am too old for this shit.
How old are you?
I'm 33.
You're just a little younger than me. I'm 40.
Yeah. But I've always been an old soul myself. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I get the feeling, like, you're probably the quietly more dangerous of the two of us. I just somehow get that little feeling.
Is it because I write dark romance about mafia guys that?
No, I you're as chill as I am. That's the one thing I actually get from this. That's the biggest thing. You're as chill as I am. So, but I also think, like, again, we both have our own little realms of crazy. I just somehow feel, you learned some of the lessons. It took me longer to learn, a little faster, a little bit, right? I also feel like your husband is probably similar, at least in some ways, to you in this as well. So you've had that support system as well. So between both, your quickness to learn that, I feel like you're probably a little tough. And I don't really feel like offended saying that. Just like, I just get that feeling. It's like, you're probably a little tougher than I am.
No, I'm definitely the hothead of the two of us. And it's funny because we're both fire signs. Not that really has any bearing on reality, but I always joked that I'm like, I really do, like, correspond with my sign. But he's way more chill than I am, but even he has a limit. So, and I think it is all about, like, limits. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a fire sign or a water sign or a whatever, but it is about, like you said, the experiences you've had in your past, the trauma that you've had in your past, what you've seen, and what you will and will not tolerate. And as we get older, we definitely learn. We learn by sticking our hand on that hot plate, and like, okay, now I know. Now it's just one more thing for the memory bank of, like, okay, when this person acts like this, I know that this is what's coming. So
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I don't have now. I try to be better at sometimes delivering the message sometimes, but the truth of the matter is, I recognize just myself personally, just there's a time to walk, and
yep,
and that's the other thing. Like when you get older, you realize quitting's a beautiful thing. When and
it's
if
powerful.
yeah, well, it's a beautiful thing. It's not don't quit. No, you don't quit what you want to go for in life, but you can always change how you get there.
Yep. Yep. I think I've definitely learned a lesson by, whether it was a job or a relationship or whatever it was, like, sometimes staying too long is the worst possible thing you can do.
Yeah.
So, and it's not good for you, your health, or the other person or the other, organization.
Oh yeah.
Being able to cut that tie and just say, nope, I preserve and I value my peace more than I value whatever I'm supposed to be getting out of this, because I'm no longer getting out of this. So
this is where where the ultimate detachment is. These are all just things, and
yep,
almost every one of these things is replaceable if you really
yep,
really want to replace them.
yep. And
So
you touched on it earlier. I think when you have the experience where you do move around a lot, or you have been through some sort of trauma in your life, that it is powerful to not have those attachments to those things. Like, because
yeah,
you can just be like, all right, well, yes, I lost everything and that was awful, but I can go on. I'll be
yeah.
okay.
You don't have to like again. It's not hard to just it's not hard to recognize like these are things.
Nope.
That's
If
that's it.
I think, honestly, besides my, my husband and the people I love and my pets, if I lost everything else, it would be like, okay,
I'm not gonna
it
lie.
would not.
There would be some comic books I would miss. There would be some comic books I would miss.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah,
There's a box. There's a box of things.
yeah. Well, everybody's got that little bit of
We've
box.
all got a
Because again,
box. We've got
yeah,
a box.
yeah. But yeah, it's a lot smaller than people realize, right? But
Yep.
you don't get to that point without you don't come to that point until you realize. I think until you do experience some things in life, right?
Yep.
And when you go through that point, you kind of just go, I'm still here.
Yep.
That's important.
Yep.
Is there anything else nearly as important as this? And this sounds very selfish to some people watching or listening right now, but honestly, you're still here, which means tomorrow you got another chance to do this all over again if you want.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
There's not much else that matches that. But if you do have something that matches that, that's important to you.
Yep. That's what you'll fight for it and you will work to preserve it.
That's right. That's right. So, Miss Gangster, Miss Mobster here.
I love that that's my title, because I don't feel like I'm a gangster or a mobster. I mean, I don't know.
I could totally see you as a gangster. I totally could, actually.
That makes me happy.
I like you. I think.
I like you too, Josh. You seem like a lot of fun.
Yeah. No. I think we totally would. I think we totally would get along.
We totally would.
I think we totally would. But no, I totally could see it just because I don't think anyone could tell you no. I just feel like that's a big thing about you. I just don't think anyone really could.
I feel like I get told no all the time, but my husband would probably agree with you.
Well, you get told. Okay, here's the thing. You can
just because you tell me no doesn't mean I'm going to accept your no. I mean, like,
there's that, but I also you do respect boundaries.
Yes.
I also do, but I also get the impression that sometimes you'll just push to see what you can get away with to some degree too,
Do
and
I just
that
written on my forehead somewhere? Is there
no,
like
I
a little
you're
bit?
okay. So no, it's simply because you are a very strong person, and much like so, iron kind of sharpens iron. You're going to push just to see if you can. It's nature. So your husband, I'm imagining, is also kind of like no, and there's a couple no's you will listen to. It's like I'm crossing a line, and
Yep.
you might need to be pushed back a
100%.
little bit every so often.
Yep.
But you don't mind
But
like
that's why it
those
works.
no's you will listen to.
Yes. That's why it works. There's a okay, maybe we, shouldn't run over people in traffic because you have road rage. That's probably a bad idea. Why don't we dial that back? And I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. But there's also a limit of like, okay, okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay. Like I need that. I need that to be like, yes, let me, I'm like a chihuahua. I just want to be on my leash. I want to scare everybody, away, and then but at the same time, like, love me, I'm fun to be around. I have a chihuahua, and it's so funny because he's the most difficult of my 3 dogs. And my husband always laughs. He's like, it's because you guys have such a, strong personality. You're both strong personalities. And the other two are like, oh my God, we love you, Mom. And the chihuahua's like, I could take you or leave you. I don't really care.
actually, it's the real nature of love, though. That's
Right.
actually the real nature.
Right. It's
It's
like
the
it's more of a, they always say like chihuahuas are the closest to like, on the higher end of intelligent animals. Like they know what they can get away with because they are so small. And they say like it's more of a, if you get a chihuahua to love you, that's like a respect thing. It's like, okay, I choose to like you.
well, I would go one step further. It's like so nature of love. Do you know how? This is going to sound really, really, really dumb. Do you know how I know
I'm
people
already
like
excited. Anything that starts with that preface, I'm excited for.
most of the most of the women in my life, whether it's my sister or just friends I have, right? They tease and pick on me. And I know you were going to say like that's a terrible thing. It's like no, it's not. It's so I have my co-host for the show I'm doing for immigration. She tortures me with cupcakes. She'll just bake cupcakes and send me pictures of them over by email.
Oh, are you trying not to eat cupcakes?
No, she's just doing it just for shits and giggles.
I like that.
You're right, but
Yes.
that's a relationship.
It's
It's
more
not. It's not. Oh, I love you and I love BW. Yes, there's some parts of that in every relationship,
yeah.
but real relationships, like okay, I'm going to say this on the air because although she'll deny this, one of my favorite things to do with my sister is to play cards with her, and if it's rummy, I like kicking her butt. But I don't like kicking her butt because of the game. I really could care less if I win or lose.
Yep.
Her reactions
Or
are
what?
why I do it. I don't care about anything
Yeah.
else, right? I just care about her reactions,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
That's my way of like poking.
That's like that. That's in my experience with like whether it was a relationship or it was like a friend's relationship, like if someone was indifferent to you or like some like a person you care about, the indifference actually hurts more than a reaction of anger or hurt or joy. Like
Yeah,
indifference of being like, I don't care. That's literally the worst because it just shows like you can't get that reaction at all. Like we're humans. We're after that reaction. We're after that human connection with someone else. And that's what makes it exciting. And if someone can just be like, yeah, I don't really care. Oh, you're leaving? Okay. Whatever.
mm-hmm.
Like that's just so much worse.
Well, yeah. Usually that's a trust. That usually when it gets to that point, though, that usually means that trust has been like
Yes.
thoroughly damaged.
Yes. I mean, again, like there's a reason for it, of course, unless you're just a psychopath that feels nothing ever. But if you had a relationship where there was a connection and then suddenly that person is just completely like, nope, don't care. Something big happened. Either it was
Yeah.
trust, something else really big happened.
Yeah, trust was shattered. Like, and that's
Yeah.
but it's again, when someone acts up, someone fights you a little bit, someone like pushes you. That's actually like one of the biggest signs of love and respect. Oddly enough, because they trust you enough that they can push you,
Yep.
and trust will still be there when it's over.
Yep.
That's huge. That is the true
Yeah.
definition. That's the true definition of love.
If someone
Right?
will treat you with their flaws, or if you're like, hey, like as a couple, like let's lose weight, let's do something together, and that person tries to push you to do better for yourself, to choose better for yourself, they're invested in you. They're invested in where, you know, you go as a person. So you're right, that is the true definition of love, because it means that they care about you more than like their own selfish wants out of that relationship. They want you to be successful because they know that it'll make you feel good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's it, right? So your chihuahua, when they're fighting you, it's not because like there's actually a deep love there, that they're just like, I can fight you because you're gonna let me fight you, and you kind of get the same thing out of it. I'm going to fight you back.
Yep.
Right. And sometimes the dog wins. Sometimes you win.
Yep.
Right. But that's
my kneecaps all the time. So.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
He gets me.
Yeah. It's again. It's that like the true nature of love is when you know you can go through all this, and there's actually it's a genuine connection. It's not abuse. It's a genuine, real connection.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. And I think the fact that you allow someone to tease you, or like there's always a healthy line, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you know when that line's been crossed.
Yeah.
Like if you can laugh about it afterwards, then it wasn't a malicious, you know. I'm not picking on you because I'm a narcissist and I'm trying to, you know, break you down. I'm picking on you because, like, you know, come on, don't eat the cupcake. You can do better.
That's
you know
right. Here's my cupcakes. It's like
It's hilarious that she's torturing you with cupcakes.
That's right. Awesome. It's going to be my author bio. My co-host tortures me with cupcakes.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Can
right?
be tortured with cupcakes. You know, that should be on a
display. You can torture anybody. You can torture anybody with food. You can do it to anybody. You just gotta find that right thing.
Especially cupcakes. That's like the easiest thing to torture someone with.
Ice cream's even easier.
Oh, don't even get me started on ice cream. I'm a sherbet person. I love like the tangier, like fruity ice creams. You were like, I can't live on ice cream, and I'm like,
yes, you can. Like, well, you can't.
Right? Don't tell me no.
Nicole, I feel we just gotten to know each other, but I'm not gonna say don't ever have ice cream, but just remember, little goes a long way.
Well, I'll just have to remember that I am on an American healthcare system, and I can't have ice cream all the time because, you know.
Yeah,
it's free.
Yes, because when your doctor bill is what it is down there for nothing, like literally nothing, you're like, wow.
Yep. I have my best friend's husband is a doctor, and he has said like his biggest thing is he's like, people need to cut back the sugar and they need to drink water. He's like, every single patient I have is dehydrated. Mm-hmm. Every single one. And I can tell him up and down, like, a lot of your problems would go away. Oh, you got dry, itchy skin. Oh, you get migraines all the time, or you're in a lot of pain, or you have a lot of back pain. You need to be drinking a gallon of water a day. Oh, come on, doc. You know, water's not going to fix it. Water?
Yeah, sometimes it does. Sometimes it does.
Not always, but, you know, a lot of it's worth it to try, since it's like just drinking water.
Well, health is an exercise in little things, not big things.
Yeah.
Right. That's actually what it is for the vast majority of it. Right. Yep. When we get to the surgeon table is the last resort, folks, not the first.
Nope.
If you got to the surgeon table, that means there was a lot of steps missed in between, or we don't know what we're doing, like a new disease,
or you just have the worst genetics possible, and you know, sorry about your luck.
You can cheat genetics. You can cheat genetics.
You can cheat genetics.
Yeah, sure. You can do it. You just have, again, it comes down to
choices.
Those fundamental building blocks. from the vast majority of us,
Yep.
right? But then again, it's like going back to the big system. Most Americans don't know how their banking system works. Most Americans don't know how their health works. Most Americans don't know how anything works outside of what's on television. Which,
Yep.
when you look at what's on television, it's fucking useless. It just is.
It's kind of crazy because I remember when I was in high school and some of my girlfriends, we were chatting, like, we had heard our parents talking about doing taxes, and we were like, why is that not something that we're taught? Like, you go through high school and then you turn 18 and you're kicked out into the world, and you're in college and you're doing all this, and there's certain life skills that you're not taught, like, but then you're expected to manage your credit, or file your taxes correctly or change a tire on your car. And, if you haven't had someone in your life that's shown you those things, it's pretty crazy to navigate the world. But you're right. Like, a lot of Americans don't know how most of that stuff works. So it's just like, it's just this, invisible system that operates. And you're like, oh,
Here's the thing. I think this is something I realized. So I don't know what your critical thinking was taught in high school was. I have no idea. In Canada, in Ontario, I was one of the last, like, our education system. I was the last of a particular education system. Do I know how everything magically works? No. But what I was given was the tools to figure out all these things on my own. They actually showed you how to critically think, solve problems on your own, understand the systems around you, if you want to look. Now, whether you want to look or not, that's another conversation. There is a as a society, North America, not just the United States but Canada too, suffers from what I think of falling in love with outcomes far too much than looking at the reality, and that's a psychosis that maybe that this podcast is certainly not equipped to deal with the full answers to, right?
We'll have to cover that on our next one.
Yeah. But what I will say is, if you understand how a system works, you can change it. Because then you know how to fundamentally look at a system and go, this is the flaws, this is how we can fix it. And what honestly has to be looked at, and this is going to sound very conspiratorial, but here's the thing: these systems make certain people lots of money. We touched on the medical briefly. Medical makes a lot of money with the way things are. The military makes a lot of money with the way things are. Governments make money with the way things are. So we are dealing. This isn't a concern. It's a classic situation. Is they want to keep the way to keep a system going for as long as possible without it breaking down is to keep people as unaware of how that system works.
Right.
And tying back to your wonderful mafia situation is when you don't see a system that will fix your problem directly, you start going to indirect sources to solve your problems.
Yep. Jackson talks about how, she's like, what is this like? Like, are people in on it? Is the government in on it? And in his world, he's kind of like, it's as simple as, like, it's an ecosystem. Your government officials need a certain level of crime so that they can run their platform that says, hey, we'll reduce crime, like, elect me, I'll take care of crime. So he, in my book, the mayor works with Jackson to secure a certain level of crime and keep that, where it's supposed to be, so that they can have a police force, so that they can have rehab, so that they can have all these government funded programs. He's like, if you really wanted, you could have all of the problems swept up and the streets clean in a few months flat, with the resources that we have available. He's like, but then you would see a decrease, you would see an increase in unemployment because you would have police officers that are getting cut off the force because there's no work for them. You would have, all these funded programs that are there. So he's like, it is an ecosystem. You need predator and prey. And he's like, so we provide the prey, and then we operate our underground the way that we want to because, we're allowed to. And that's like the concession that we're given. But it is all based on choices. And he's like, we deliver a different kind of justice. So, a lot of things that can't be taken care of through the court system are kind of tossed to Jackson's world to take care of. you know, that rich, socialite guy who's, abusing his woman. Well, you take him to court, he's probably going to get off by paying a couple fines and not see a day of jail time. Not if the mafia boss knows about it, then that's a different story. So, that's kind of the world that we created there based on that whole system. So just, it made sense to me that it's like, this is something that's going on behind the scenes, and, we are happy to stay in the dark. And she's kind of like, I had no idea this was happening. And he's like, you're not supposed to. That's kind of the point.
I'll always just say, folks, you want to sum this up, and this might sound conspiratorial to some of you, but this is going to sound conspiratorial to some of you.
Right.
We live in a world in which our problems dictate our solutions. And if you really want to change the world, change your problems.
Yep. Be the captain in your own life. Because if you let someone direct you, then you're on their ship, not yours.
Yep, and also keep in mind, folks, this is the one thing, and we both quietly danced around this. I'll just say it openly: there really are no rules in life. There really isn't. So all of this to say, choose wisely, choose accordingly, and regardless of whether you think we're crazy or not, which, by the way, we both openly are. Right. That's okay, right? It's always be aware, understand how your system works wherever you are. And if you don't know, ask.
Absolutely.
I think you agree with pretty much all of that.
I agree with everything you just said. I thought that was, I was like, is he wrapping up the podcast? Because that was awesome. That was a perfect ending line.
Yeah. Well, well, it depends. How long do you have? That's my question. Because I get the feeling, because this is the feeling I have. I feel we do have a little bit more time if we really want to go there, and we can talk about your book specifically from here on in. But I also get the feeling that you don't have too much time, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, if you wanted to take a couple minutes and just have me give a quick run through, I could do that. But I would happily do that.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking, because I don't want you to feel unwelcome. I also just don't want you to feel like
No, I get you. Right.
Yeah. Because I have gone much longer than this, but I also get I just get that feeling, and maybe it's a feeling. You got other things you need to do, and I totally respect that. So.
No, that's perfect. I could, again, if you wanted me to just give a quick run through.
Yeah, actually, what I'll ask before we wrap up is, okay, so you said this, you have this mafia underworld thing going on here, and we talked a little bit how you got there. So did you release the first book last year?
No, so both books were actually released this year. So, and they're chunky books. I got the first one, which is Catalyst. Big old chunky girl. This is an even thicker girl here. That's Ignite. That's the second one. So the first one released in April of this year, and the second one just dropped in September. And it's going to be a trilogy, so there's one more coming out in the spring of next year. And basically it just covers this world where you have this mafia boss who meets kind of this girl next door. She's a nurse. She is just randomly in the city of Chicago, which Jackson, our mafia boss, happens to run. And she saves his daughter from a kidnapping. He's a single dad. She saves his daughter. And he is just kind of blown away by this person who's just a genuinely good person to be a good person. He's used to this world where it's like nobody does anything for free. So he's, a little bit confused by her. And in the process, they both kind of just collide. And then nothing's ever the same. So yeah, it's got equal parts. It's kind of like a James Patterson meets like a, read by yourself because you might be blushing kind of storyline to it. So yeah, it's both. I wanted something that, both my male and female readers would enjoy, and nobody would feel like, oh, this is just a romance or this is just a thriller. So it's kind of both.
I have a question, just an off chance. Are you an Alana Andrews fan by any chance?
Who?
Alana Andrews.
I've heard her name, but I don't think I've actually read.
Actually, it's their name. It's a husband and wife team, right? Ooh. It's urban fantasy / romance, but it's almost. I somehow get the feeling.
That sounds pretty close, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like again. And by the way, nothing wrong with that. if
It's
your
not
voice
quite
is a strong.
dystopian, but I've had
No,
people
no, no.
as that too.
You're a little bit more like today's crazy world, not tomorrow's crazy world, but today's
Yeah,
crazy world.
yeah.
Yeah, which is totally fine.
Today's crazy world, and what's again, I kind of fantasize about like what we don't know, what's happening. I was a big Peaky Blinders fan, and so they have some very similar concepts to like how they operate, and so that was kind of an inspiration too. But yeah, it's got something for everybody in there. So
That's really cool, and it's available now pretty much everywhere.
yep, it's on Amazon, Kindle. Will be available on more when the third book comes out. That's going to be available on multiple platforms, but as of right now, it's just available on Amazon and Kindle.
Yeah. I'm kind of doing the same thing. So how can people find you, Miss Nicole?
They can find me at my website, which is N as in Nicole, herownwords.com. So nherownwords.com is my website. It's pretty boring and basic because I'm not a graphic designer. I'm a writer. I'm on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, even though I am not good at Twitter. Thankfully, Twitter's not a real place. So it's okay.
Well, this conversation with me has taught you absolutely anything. It's that there's not many.
All
real
of
places
social media is just a fun little fantasy land that we like to play around in sometimes. So,
well, I do want you to come back at some point, maybe in the springtime when your next release is, because I think
yeah,
I think
or next week. I can just come back next week. We
I
can
mean, I'm a little booked for next week, but I mean
I'm just kidding. I've enjoyed our chat so much. It's been a blast.
Like straight up, I get the impression in real life, quote unquote, in real life, whatever that is, I think we'd get along.
We'd totally be friends. We'd be breaking down all the world's problems at a coffee shop somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. This is what the show does. Don't tell anybody. I mean,
love it.
Mostly I encourage people to follow their dreams. It sounds like actually I can honestly say this. You're one of the few people. You're almost the opposite of most of my guests in this sense, in that I don't think you need to be told what to do with your life. I feel in your case sometimes you just need someone to either pull you back occasionally, or hey, listen, look around, see what opportunities in front of you. Yeah, that's like someone like you is like me, gets caught up in their own little world that they sometimes miss stuff. Absolutely. Right? So you just need that point. Yep. But beyond that, you don't need very much. You certainly don't need permission, and you certainly don't need. You're just going to go for it, and that's awesome. Thank you. And I wish you the best of luck with everything you do.
Thank you so much, Josh. This has been so much fun. You are such a fantastic judge of character, and you definitely have a gift. So you're definitely doing what you're called to do. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I'm getting there. And for everybody watching and or listening to this show, I'm going to put up. Give me a second here, because I'm a trained professional and shit. Don't tell anybody. Right. Because I'm good at my job, or something to that effect. So I'm just going to put this at the end in every episode. This is my next book. It's coming out December 1st. It's Alice in Wonderland as Greek mythology. Alice meets Pandora. She opens the box, and a certain Cheshire friend is in her head. And this is book 2, the first full book of the series, in which Alice plays croquet with Jason of the Argonauts in the underworld, an underworld labyrinth. It's kind of fun. It's kind of my little crazy little homage to Alice in Wonderland. If you guys are interested, check that out. Outside of that, my Twitch channel is twitch.tv/JustJoshua Podcasts. Definitely hit the follow button there. If you're on YouTube, my channel is Joshua Pantellaresco. Hit the like and subscribe there. Beyond that, guys, this is Nicole Fanning. She's awesome. I will be back Thursday. I have a really cool guest on Thursday. Been a very, very cool, busy week. Guys, stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. And I will see you guys Thursday. And